Welcome to Boilers Extra, the live edition, the late night live edition. I'm Nathan Baird from Indy Star. I'm in the Bahamas.
Sam King from the Journal and Courier from my home office. I feel like we're the people that go after Leno or Letterman, that are the people that stay up extra late. You're kind of the closing act, I guess.
Well, and you can't even name those people anymore, which is the problem. It used to be Letterman that was on as the late guy,
Yes.
and then he got bumped up. So maybe we'll have that fortune someday. But Purdue beats Memphis 80-71. Texas Tech beats Wake Forest 84-83. I didn't get to watch any of that, so hopefully you did, Sam, and you can give us a little bit of something about what the Red Raiders are going to show to Purdue tomorrow night. I was obviously writing about the first game, but an interesting one, to say the least. A very testy game, a very physical game, very rough game, very emotional game, and I thought a game that tested Purdue's composure, frankly, and they found some just in time, and I think that CJ Cox and Fletcher Lawyer had a lot to do with that in the second half. But just the fact that they were in a game that they could have gotten a game where I thought they were taking the bait a little bit. I'll make a bad parallel here, but like a week ago, Purdue football goes out to Washington, and I thought they took the bait there, but they have such a talent disparity, a deficiency compared to Washington, that it was playing into Washington's hands to have it go like that. Here, I thought it could have gone a similar way from the other angle, but I thought Purdue was the one that not just found its composure, but then also it started knocking down shots, and I think that helped maybe bring them that composure.
Yeah, and that could have been catastrophic at the end of the first half. You lose, maybe the most important player for you up to that point of the game.
Yeah.
And then you can't start the second half with Trey Kaufman right on the floor because you could tell he got the one on the offensive end and he was chirping with the officials. And at that point, I thought he was going to get taken out of the game, and goes down the other end, picks up another quick foul. Okay, it's got to stop there. You got to stop the bleeding. And instead, he's still kind of chirping, and he gets a technical foul. And it could have been catastrophic. But Memphis also gets a couple technical fouls during the course of the game. The last one being just nonsensical, and I thought was a real big turning point in the game because Memphis led 61-59, I think, at that point. And you get up off the floor after you kind of flopped and tried to draw a foul on Oscar Clough and go at his face. I'm having a hard time remembering the guy's name in the moment here.
Bradshaw.
Yeah.
Aaron Bradshaw.
Aaron Bradshaw. And he, I think it was all good until he pointed a finger in Clough's face. But that was the kind of opening that Purdue needed when you talk about composure. One team lost it in a key moment in that game. And Fletcher Lawyer goes down, hits a pair of free throws at 61-61, and Purdue kind of took control of the game from then on out. But it was physical. It was tough. I thought Memphis did a good job starting some longer guys to start the game, kind of giving Purdue a different look. And you saw how that affected Purdue's shot. They weren't hitting shots early other than Trey Kaufman coaxing some goaltendings to get that offense going. So, this was a good team for Purdue to see to open this tournament because you saw a lot of athleticism. You saw a team that ultimately played probably more length than you thought it would. And it was physical and tough. And it was a game that Purdue had to kind of grind out when it wasn't shooting well and playing its best for a good portion of the game.
And I asked Fletcher Lawyer after the game, he said that they were not expecting to see both those 7-footers. I don't know that Memphis had started both those 7-footers together yet this season. That was not something they were expecting to see. Somebody that we had talked about coming into the game in Sincere Parker, he came off the bench in this game, who was the leading scorer coming into this game. So, Memphis had tried some things here. I didn't think that this was like a performance where Memphis was coming in and just trying to, slam bodies or whatever to try to take Purdue out of something. I thought they just play physically. And Penny Hardaway after the game even said that he was really happy with how hard his team had played and thought that if they had played that hard all season, they might be 3-1 now instead of 1-3. And Matt Painter credited them too for the way that they came out. They did put that extra length on the floor. That did cause Purdue, I believe, some problems early on and had to adjust to that. Memphis also was hitting some threes, very out of character for itself early on. By the way, really funny exchange with Fletcher Lawyer after this game. I have a post up on IndyStar.com about it, jconline.com, or go to our YouTube with a clip of Fletcher Lawyer about halfway through that we have this really interesting back and forth with him about whether the rims at one end of this court, and I'm looking at them now, are higher on one end than they are on the other. Fletcher Lawyer insists that they are. But I've lost my train of thought because my boss just asked me a question. But I didn't. He Painter credited Memphis for coming out and kind of just taking the initiative, and I think you're right. I think that was a something that Purdue needed to see. They just need to see as many different things as they can early in this season. The Kaufman-Wren moment, I don't. I mean, on one hand, is it a little bit out of character for him? Perhaps. I thought there were also times last season where the fouls would kind of, he would let his emotions get the best of him in those situations too. I think that is still. I asked Matt Painter about this after the game because he's always talking about the nights where his team didn't embrace the what's his phrase, embrace the physicality of the game. And I'm like, so what's the fine line there? Like embracing the physicality of the game, but also keeping your composure and not like going over the line. And it's not an easy one to keep. And I think that tonight's the best case scenario because you get taught that lesson and it didn't have to come with a loss. Like you're not having to play the early game on Friday night.
Yeah, that's something 2 years ago when Purdue went to the Final Four that Matt Painter said numerous times throughout the year, not in the same realm of what you're talking about, but there were times where he said, listen, we learned something and we still won the game. And that's the best case scenario when you can find out, this is something we got to get better at or improve on or whatever, and you still find a way to win the game. And I thought that absolutely was the case tonight with just the, I guess, composure is the word of the night. But yeah, kind of keeping your head there. And as a fifth-year senior, Trey Kaufman-Wren has to realize Daniel Jacobson already has 3 fouls. That's one of your bigs who's limited in the second half because of the situation. And then you get your 3rd foul because you can't stop tripping with the officials, and now you're in real trouble. So
well, and on top of that, I mean, I thought that was a little bit glossed over in the moment, but I definitely mentioned it as I was, doing my Twitter nonsense all game that, Jacobson has 3 fouls. Then he gets his 4th. He had 4 fouls in 5.5 minutes in an homage to freshman year Isaac Haas tonight. And he then it's not really a dig on Isaac. It turned out obviously to be a fine player, but it's just sometimes big guys early in their careers have those nights, I think. And then, but if Clough were to then get in foul trouble on top of that, who's your next center? And both Clough and Jacobson ended this game with 4 fouls. So we were not that far away from Jack Benner playing center at the end of this game, which I think would have been fun, sort of, but also probably not in Purdue's best interest.
Yeah. Best case scenario is Clough didn't foul out of the game and Kaufman-Wren did, and it probably benefited Purdue quite a bit those first 2 games where Trey wasn't in the lineup and Jack Benner had to play quite a bit because he had to play extended minutes tonight. But also you're in a crucial moments late in that game with 2.5 minutes to go with Trey Kaufman-Wren unavailable, and you have to pull it out. And Purdue's, go back to that Oakland game. Purdue was in a similar scenario, kind of a little bit. It wasn't quite that back and forth, but had to play, some tough stretches and knew it didn't have one of its best players going out there. On top of that, Braden Smith is not shooting very well. I think he kind of at some point realized that and started facilitating. He had some incredible passes in this game, and not just the behind the back pass to Benter. The one that he threw into Clough late, that was took some cojones to kind of try to thread the needle there. And but Clough was what you needed in that moment. He didn't have a big game statistically, but he had 7 boards. He ended up having double-digit points, I think. So really gave you a boost there when you needed it. and the shots came around. Purdue was abysmal from three early on, while Memphis, like you said, uncharacteristically comes out and hits 3 out of 4 to start the game, and sent me looking at their stats, and I'm like, oh, this is a team that shoots 32% from three. This is probably the night where they go shoot 50% and have a chance to knock off a team. And that ended up not being the case. Water kind of found its level, and I really was surprised that CJ Cox hit a couple corner threes and still was managing to find himself open in those scenarios. But credit to Braden Smith and Jack Benter a couple times finding him there and really got him going. He was really the lift that Purdue needed. And then Fletcher Lawyer, you talk about composure. That's a guy who was 0 for 5 in the first half and really could have just kind of said, it's not my night. And instead, he just keeps shooting, and he shoots right out of that funk and kind of looked like Fletcher Lawyer that you expect to see. And what a lift that was in a moment. And I thought he had a couple of, people like to harp on him not being a great defender. I thought he had a couple of really nice defensive plays. He dove between the screen and got a steal early. He had that strip late off the Memphis player's leg. I think it was Doug McDaniel, and knocked it out of bounds. So those two were absolutely huge, in addition to what Clough gave you when you needed it because you had foul trouble with your bigs.
Our buddy Brad Eban asks, Fletcher Lawyer thought the rim was higher on the basket Purdue played on the first half, which is why he shot so poorly in the first half. Any idea if they'll measure the rims? So, like I said, I did a post about this. It's kind of in a very tongue-in-cheek way about this sort of conspiracy theory that Fletcher Lawyer introduced. However, the whole Purdue team shot poorly from three in the first half. They were the two teams. Well, they didn't shoot well in the first half on that rim. Memphis shot poorly in the second half on that rim. Now, Memphis isn't a really good three-point shooting team at all, but they shot 1 of 10 on that rim in the second half. So the two teams combined were 5 of 24 on that rim today.
And one of them is a double clutch, one-handed to lean into the side bank shot to beat the first half buzzer.
Yeah, the Braden Smith shot. Yeah. So, like, I don't know. You tell me. Like, that's all I'm saying. He asked, are they going to measure the rims? I don't know. This does not seem like the most infrastructure I've ever experienced at a basketball event. So we'll see if they take it to that level. Brad also asks, there's a Twitter rumor that the refs Purdue had today will also call the game tomorrow. You know, if the ref pool already in the Bahamas will be the same tomorrow. I don't know that. I mean, I assume that they don't have 6 new refs that are going to do the 2 games tomorrow. So whether this crew will also do Purdue's game or if they'll do the early game, I don't know. I would kind of assume that maybe they would do the early game just because then you're giving the refs more rest. I don't know. But I want to go back to Jack Benter real quick because you said something about how it helped him to play those first 2 games. I thought that was very evident in the way the second half opened because, we're giving CJ Cox and Fletcher Lawyer credit for the threes they hit, which I think is important. But one of those threes for Cox, the first one, it was like 90 seconds into the first half. It comes on Jack Benter driving the lane and then kicking over to Cox when his defender had helped off. And I thought that recognition, and listen, they've practiced together a whole bunch too. Like, don't get me wrong, but just that game speed recognition, I don't think him having played extensive minutes in the first 2 games hurt that, obviously. And then the other play, our boss, my boss, Aaron Ferguson, asks, what was the most surprising part of tonight's game? And I think that the most surprising moment of this game was there's a fast break. Braden Smith gets a steal. He's leading the break. He looks like he's going to take it in for layup, and he kicks it behind the back to Jack Benter, who goes in and crushes a dunk. And that was really like the most eye-opening moment of this game. It gave Purdue, I think at the time, it was about a 6 or 7 point lead relatively early in the second half. They didn't keep that. They had to make another surge later on that CJ Cox was a big part of. But I wouldn't say Jack Benter was like the most surprising part of the game. That moment was very surprising. But I do think that, for a team where their main rotation is very set, and there's some people at the fringe of it on given nights that, I mean, on another night, maybe Jack Benter only plays 6 or 8 minutes, but they need him for 13 minutes tonight because of what was going on with Trakoff and Wren. And I thought there were times where Memphis really went after him. I don't know if he's going to have some tough matchups defensively. That's not really why he's out there, though. I think he's out there to do the best he can in some of those tough matchups defensively and then do the kind of things he was doing at the offensive end.
Yeah, and Purdue really does kind of, and we've heard it numerous times now already in a short season through 5 games. Purdue feels like it has more than 5 starters. It has a surplus of talent, and that can be a luxury. I wrote the story about Jakari Harris and how he's accepted this role off the bench, and he's a big spark off the bench. Braden Smith talked about he really is at his best when he comes off the bench and brings that energy and defense 4 minutes into a game. And then he barely plays tonight because CJ Cox was so good. So there's going to be nights like that where
you jinxed him. That's fine.
Guys who play 20 plus minutes one night don't play a whole lot the next night. And, that's when you have a team that's kind of, I guess, this loaded with players that are capable of going out there and playing a lot. That's what happens. But you couldn't take CJ Cox out of this game as well as he was playing.
No, CJ Cox was tremendous. And there was also that sequence late in the game where I think it was shortly after the whole fiasco with the free throws. By the way, so the Bradshaw Tech, I mean, he definitely got bumped by Oscar Clough there. Matt Painter said after the game, the refs told him, yeah, that was probably a foul that we missed on Clough, but it wasn't a flagrant. And when they looked at it wasn't a technical, it wasn't worthy of an excessive penalty. But when they did the replay, they determined, I don't know why they needed a replay for this. It happened in a very obvious way in front of everybody. But when Bradshaw went after Clough, that warranted the technical that he got. But Memphis had a 2-point lead and the ball. And if they get a basket there, every basket as you're getting later in the game obviously becomes huge. They could be taking a 2-possession lead and putting some pressure on Purdue, which already had foul trouble with all these big guys. Just a really poor decision all the way around for Bradshaw. But shortly after that, there's a play under the basket. Brian Newbert and I were debating whether it goes down in the book as a steal. It looks a lot like an offensive rebound, which is what I thought it was in real time too. But there's a missed shot by Coffin Wren. Sincere Parker gets a rebound, but it gets knocked out of his hands. Cox takes it and puts it in. That gave Purdue the lead again. And then there's a stop. Braden Smith gets a defensive rebound. He's leading the break. He kicks it back to Cox, who hits a 3 from like 5 feet in front of me, like right here on the wing. And from that point on, Purdue leads by 4 the rest of the way. I just thought CJ Cox is, of the guys on this team, one of the ones I think you would say is the most even-keeled and the most level-headed. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it won this game. And he was making like game-turning plays in a game that was otherwise very volatile, very all over the place.
Yeah. And that play you're referring to, I wrote down an offensive rebound on my notes until I saw the official stats for it, going down as a rebound and a turnover and the steal by Cox, but which was strange. It was just it seemed like a big, scrum and a loose ball that Cox just was in the right place at the right time. Anyway, we saw him do this before, and he's not going to be a guy that goes out and averages 17 or 18 points a game, but he's a guy who's going to give you 18 points in some games, as he did tonight. That is the reason that people are so high on Purdue, because Trey Kaufman-Wren, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, those guys are always going to be consistently giving you double-figure scoring. And then when you have 4 or 5 other guys who are capable of doing this, and CJ Cox being, a main one because he's shown propensity to get really hot and just take over games when he gets going, it can be that spark. And, now if you're Texas Tech and you're watching this game, you're like, man, that's another guy we have to plan for who maybe we weren't thinking about initially.
Yeah, and I think if you had told Memphis going into this game that they were going to hold Braden Smith to 5 points on 2 of 14 shooting and he was going to commit 4 fouls, I think they would have thought that was probably a recipe for them winning this game. And, the spread on this game was like 16.5 points. Like, Memphis had not started the year very strong. Purdue had been playing pretty strong. I think Memphis did some good things to equalize and bring Purdue to a place where it was kind of playing its game for long stretches of this game, which didn't favor Purdue, but I thought Purdue eventually snapped out of that. Aaron had given me a great stat there at late in the game, where I think Purdue at halftime had like 5 assists on 14 field goals. In the second half, it was 15 assists on 16 field goals. And so in my thing where I was writing a little bit tongue-in-cheek about Fletcher Lawyer, I also mentioned that fact that the offense just ran so much more smoothly in the second half. I think that was a contributing factor to the shooting. I also think Memphis looked tired down the stretch of this game. I thought you saw it in their legs and some of the shots that they were taking and why it kind of lagged for them eventually, and they couldn't quite keep up there with the scoring at the end of the game, and they shot so poorly at the end of the game. What else do we need to talk about? Brad,
I'll say real quick. First of all, one of those assists in the first half was probably generous. Going to Trey Coffman ran it was 3 by Omer Meyer, but Omer Meyer hit 2 big threes, I thought, in that first half when nobody else could hit a shot. He hit a corner 3 that was contested, and he hit the one where he had the ball. He kind of turned around and let loose, and that was the first one that Purdue got after starting 0 for 4.
I think it must be like he's used to those higher European rims, and no.
He's probably played in a lot of ballrooms and places similar to the arena you're in right now.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, no, he hasn't, because I watched a clip from Braden Smith's podcast the other day that somebody had clipped out where Braden Smith had just casually mentioned, yeah, we're going to be playing in the hotel. And then Omer Meyer was on the pod with him and like snaps up and is like, wait a minute, did you say we're going to be playing in the hotel? And people can't tell because behind me it probably looks just like an arena, right? But it's not. Like, this is temporary seating in what is just a ballroom. Like, it's, and so Brad even had asked, was the floor slick just because wet spots weren't properly wiped up, or is that a concern for tomorrow as well? It was a very weird night from a slipperiness standpoint. I had never seen slick floors directly leading to turnovers the way it did tonight on 2 like back-to-back situations. The over and back call against Braden Smith, where he went down hard. Like, that's a kind of play where like somebody, fractures a wrist or something, the way he landed there. And then shortly after that, another somebody from Memphis had fallen down that led to a breakaway for Fletcher Lawyer in a basket.
It was an issue in the second game as well. So
what's that?
It was an issue in the second game.
Was it? Yeah.
Where the guys just slipped and fell.
I didn't get to watch any of that, but I don't know if they were showing this on TV, but like after that second instance, the Marquette slippage, the Lawyer basket, I think a timeout was called right after that. And not only were there the kid, whoever they have here, like getting out on the floor trying to do some things, but like we saw like Elliot Bloom, the Purdue basketball operations guy, and other like bench guys for Purdue are like out on the floor, like trying to wipe it up at their feet, or like bringing out, like the Purdue managers are coming out with towels and stuff. Like, they were just trying to get everybody out on the floor that they could. I think there's a couple of factors here. I mean, you put a lot of people in this smaller space, and it's warmer weather here next to the ocean. I think there's just all of that is probably a factor. I do think, though, there were just a lot of bodies on the floor in this game, and that was probably not getting wiped up as quickly or sufficiently, and I think that was contributing to things. The fact that it was then a problem in the second game, though, I think, to answer Brad's question, is that a concern for tomorrow? I think it's a concern. Yeah, I would be concerned about it. I think, though, that after today, I imagine that these teams will be more proactive about it themselves, and I think they'll probably be communicating to the tournament organizers that they need to be more proactive as well to keep things better mopped up, better cleaned up, better wiped up than what you saw tonight.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, this place is not designed for basketball. It's not, there might be a wedding there the day after this tournament ends. There could be a wedding in this ballroom for all we know this weekend. But you also had guys that, dive for loose balls and you're wrestling around on the ground and stuff like that. And that also leads to perspiration just being on the court as well that may not be cleaned up properly. But Purdue prevails. Nobody got hurt. That's the good thing that came out of both of these games today. And like you said, now they're probably a little bit more aware of this, and you can stop the game in action possibly tomorrow and say, hey, we got to get this cleaned up and avoid any catastrophes. But Purdue moves on, plays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time against now Texas Tech, which, really two really nice, good back and forth games for anybody who stayed for both of those today. Texas Tech, a team that survived this win. I thought that Wake Forest, kind of similar to what it did at Michigan, kind of yacked it away when it had a couple opportunities late. But the other team has to make plays too, and Texas Tech did. And now Purdue's facing a familiar face in Grant McCaslin, who people may remember from the 2021 NCAA bubble tournament, led North Texas over Purdue in the first round.
That's right. I had forgotten about that. He mentioned it in the post game about having had some experience with Purdue, and I was not here covering the team at that time, and that had just kind of slipped my mind. But that's a good point. I think the bigger concern for Purdue is not the coach; it's the players on the court, and especially in this case, JT Toppin. So 6'9", 230. He scored. I think he had 21 and 9 tonight with 4 assists, and he's a big time player. And I think that this is probably going to be a matchup for Trey Kaufman-Renn, but is it a matchup that is Trey Kaufman-Renn's alone? And how do they help onto that? How will they especially need to help onto that when it's Jack Benter in the game? Because as much as I think Jack Bender is giving them good minutes as a 4 who probably shouldn't be playing power forward, man, is that a tall order if you ask him to do that. And it's not just the fact that he's 6'9", it's the fact that he's JT Toppin and he's 6'9". Yeah. He's just a great player.
There's a guy who was an All-American last year and is averaging like 25 points a game this season.
Yeah. And so like how does Purdue handle that matchup without leaving itself vulnerable to what some of these other players can do? Christian Anderson, really strong guard, 16 points, 8 assists tonight. It's just a really talented team, and another opportunity to see a different style of play, a different group of athletes, and the kind of, this is not that unlike an NCAA tournament scenario. It's like you just had a really tough game. Usually you have a game in between, right? You have more prep time. Here it's more like, hey, we played this really tough game. We try to drink as much Gatorade and water as we can, and we have a walkthrough and some meetings tomorrow, and then we go out and try to beat this team on Friday night. Same situation for Texas Tech too. They're gonna have to play the number 1 team in the country under this scenario. I just think that this is what these early season tournaments are all about, like getting this opportunity to have that kind of adverse situation to try to beat a really good team.
Yeah. So like I said yesterday, I saw Texas Tech play at Illinois and gave the Illini in a tough road environment. I mean, that's right up there with Mackey for this insanity for opposing teams. Gave that team everything they wanted, and JT Toppin had like 35 points in that game. If you're a Purdue fan who wants your team to win this tournament, I think you would have rather seen Wake Forest. And by the way, Miles Colvin had a really nice game, really almost lifted Wake Forest to a victory in that game. Hit another late four-head 3. I think he had 16 or 19 points, something like that.
19, yep.
Yeah, he was pretty good for Wake Forest, and he's been becoming a really nice player for them. But Purdue's not playing Wake Forest. I think if you're Purdue from the inside and you want to get better and see something else that can help you improve, you want to play Texas Tech because, like you said, JT Toppin and Christian Anderson, those are 2 guys who led this team on the cusp of making the Final Four. I think they got beat by Florida in the Elite Eight last year and gave Florida its toughest game until the national title, really. And Purdue gave the other national finalist, Houston, its toughest game in the tournament. So you have 2 teams that are experienced and have gone deep in the tournament and guys who are just comfortable playing together. That lends itself to really good basketball. I'm not so sure we saw really good basketball at times from Purdue against Memphis, but we saw it in spurts, and we saw it enough for Purdue to get the victory. Purdue will have to play much better tomorrow to win, but also Texas Tech had some spurts where it didn't look its best, and we'll have to play much better to beat Purdue. So now it's about adjusting and how you get better going forward. But I think, you got a really nice guard matchup there with Braden Smith and Christian Anderson. You got a really good post matchup with Trey Kaufman-Renn and JT Toppin. And, this is a marquee game. I know Texas Tech is ranked in the mid-teens, but
15.
This feels like a top 10 game, just like the Alabama game a week ago.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be a really good game. I'm looking forward to a good game. And Matt Painter said about the first game tonight, it was a tough game to play, a tough game to coach, and a tough game to officiate, which typically then means it's a tough game to watch at times. And I think that was probably the case. But But as with everything else with this team, it's like just a learning experience, a data point, just a little whatever, like the little chip that you put into the machine that you're trying to become over the course of this season. And how does it help you down the line? Can it ever help you down the line? Do you get in a scenario like this next time you make a different decision, a cooler head prevails? Like if they have Trakoff and Wren to start the second half as well as they were playing, and again, Jack Benner did some good things there, but like if Trakoff and Wren only has 2 fouls, he starts the second half. He doesn't wait until there's like 12 something to come in, right? And now one of the better players in the country is on the court for you to start the second half. Like, I don't know. I like your chances of winning better with him on the court than not on the court. So, yeah, I think he would probably handle that situation better the next time. I think that Memphis would probably handle some situations better the next time. Learning experiences all around. But it's time for me to go catch some sleep. Thanks for hanging on with us for a half an hour. Thanks for your questions. And we'll probably do this something like it tomorrow night. It's going to be even later because it's a 9:30 tip-off tomorrow night on CBS Sports Network or wherever this is showing for Purdue against Texas Tech in the championship here at Baha Mar. For Sam King, Nathan Baird, thanks for joining us.